Gary and I had worked for the design firm in Morristown, New Jersey. And we did electronic toy and game design. That's where Gary invented Bank Shot for Parker Brothers. I invented actually one of the first electronic board games that was almost picked up by Milton Bradley. We did Wildfire for Parker Brothers, an electronic pinball game. We did a lot of prototyping of electronic toys and games back then. Worked with the guy who did the sound for Merlin back then for Parker Brothers. Actually, John Van Ryzen, who did Hero, was a tech with me in the firm. And John's desk was right next to mine. And, you know, we were doing some pretty cool shit. I mean, we were doing, back then, we were doing an LCD space game that had a display that was 4 by 4 inches. But we had to hand solder, 57 chips on 4 boards and stack them with ribbon cables. That was the kind of stuff John and I were making. And John said, I got the coolest fucking game. I got a skiing game. And it's on the Atari system where I used to play Pong and Combat, but it's different than the Atari games. It doesn't even look like an Atari. So he brought it into the office and set it up and flicks the switch and the white screen comes up with the green trees. And we're like, holy shit, this isn't an Atari. It's not blocky. And look, it doesn't flicker. And we just spent the entire afternoon playing Bob Whitehead's skiing game. And John was the world record holder of our office on that. He just could tap that joystick and cut those trees really well. And that's when Gary looked at it and said, shit, Gary's brilliant as a programmer, but brilliant as a businessman. He said, I bet you we can do cartridges for this. So he, unbeknownst to John and unhappy John was, started ripping apart his 2600, take a look at the chipset, and then gave it to me and said, here, unsolder the chips really carefully, don't destroy them, and let's figure out some system to plug them into and bring them up onto a display so we can start seeing the mnemonics and see what the hell this thing is. And so I helped create the hardware that did that, but then Gary took it and downloaded all the whole game and printed it out as a huge printout and started to go through the puzzle solving task of literally learning what they were doing and what hardware registers they were writing to and what the 6502 was doing. And he's the one who literally took John's original Atari system, ripped it apart, and eventually did Space Jockey by playing around in the lab for 5 months. That was actually how we met Activision. Gary finishes Space Jockey and we fly out. So I think it was the 1982 Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January. Activision had a booth. Atari had a booth, but Activision had one of their, it's like their second CES. And we walked over and introduced ourselves to one of the people there. And he said, well, you should meet Tom Lopez, the head of product development. And Gary introduced himself as the programmer of Space Jockey. And it was like the first time someone had actually reverse engineered the system that wasn't working for Atari or Activision. Because it was an Atari proprietary system. Guys who left Atari to start Activision had to go through 7 months of back engineering the Atari 2600 as if they had never worked at Activision because they weren't allowed to take any of that information. So they literally back engineered it again as if they had not known it, and it became a subject of a lawsuit between the two companies where they did prove to the court that they back engineered it on their own. But this is the first time somebody not connected with those two companies walked up and said, hey, I can program this machine. So they were very intrigued. How the hell did you do it? So Gary's